Welcome, guys, to the Let's Talk. I mean, Spirit Soul series, and we are back again after a while, taking a break, and we also had to unwind, and now we're back, and so it's me and Supriya Cheji again discussing about the Bhagavad Gita, and we're going to move into the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Am I right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So the
Yeah.
third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. I think we finished the second chapter, which is basically like Arjuna's question to Krishna and all his doubts and all that stuff. And people like I've in this last 2 weeks I've heard a lot of people speak, and they've all said that the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is is basically the question um you know is basically a renunciation of all of everything materialistic. It's just a question of it's like it takes that whole question in for granted, that whole thing, why do you need to do any of this material activity and all that stuff, and just surrender and then do all the things that are meant for spiritual upliftment. That means
Mm.
complete non-attachment. So it's like Arjuna is just basically telling Krishna that time, none of this is worth it. So
Mm.
I've heard many people say the second chapter is actually like you can just you can altogether just skip it if you want. Like it's a big chapter, but you can skip it, because it's it's only asking that question. The real teaching of the Gita comes after some time. I've a lot of these sages online have said this. I've heard people Swami Sarvapriyananda from the other mission, right?
Right.
Ramakrishna, that this thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's they have a separate commentary of the Bhagavad Gita, which is also quite
Yeah.
fascinating, because it's interesting to see what everybody's saying, everybody
Yeah.
so he says that that's the basic thing, and then the fundamental discussion of the Gita starts after the second chapter. That's when the whole thing starts. So yeah, I guess now it should be they're delving deep into the whole thing now, I guess.
Okay. Thank you, Kannan. Nice to be back. We didn't do any
Yeah.
podcast for 2 weeks. Hare
Hmm.
Krishna and Jai
Hare
Srila
Krishna.
Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Now, I just beg to differ with one thing from my
Hmm.
perspective and what I have heard. I mean, so many commentaries. The
Hmm.
second chapter is very much the heart of the Bhagavad Gita.
Oh, okay.
It's not something that can be dispensed with, because
Hmm.
so much information is being given about the soul,
Hmm.
so much. And unless you accept that there is something called the soul and you turn your whole perspective to that spirit soul, then there's no change at all in our way we look at things.
Hmm.
So many verses in the second chapter are given to the quality of the soul, how it can never be destroyed, how it is so tiny, and how you know that the soul is still there because then the person has consciousness, and once
Hmm.
the soul has left the body, it's a dead body. You pinch it, slip it, you hit it, the body doesn't have consciousness and it doesn't react. So the second chapter is crucial, and also because it brings up this whole point about how lust starting from, you keep looking at an object, then you get attached to the object. It may just be something that's being advertised. Whether you need it or not, you start feeling, I want it, I want it, I want it. Then you get it and you're not satisfied. So there's some mild frustration, in some cases anger. You take it out on the producer and you return the product, and or on the courier, or and if you didn't go and get it also, it leads to anger. And when anger really overtakes, I've seen it happen even to people who are just regularly ordering things on courier. The item comes is not what they expected, because by then so much expectation has built up. You've just
Hmm.
kept staring at the product. You buy one of these fancy kurtas, ladies, you can view it from the back, you can view it from the front, you can view it, and by then but when it comes, the color is something quite different.
Hmm.
You're so disappointed. It's happened to me. I was looking for a lavender lilac Navia's kurta. What they send is some kind of gray. And then returning it is such a trip that you almost feel it's better that you just keep it, somehow keep it. So, like this, and when anger overtakes, you remember those verses in
Hmm.
62, 63, like that. Then the mind gets bewildered, the intelligence is lost, you do horrible things in a fit of anger, and you go down in the material pool. Meaning, if you go and do horrible things, which sometimes end in tragedy, although you didn't mean it like that, what can happen is that then it ends in the death of someone. Say you are not, you pay for it, you get sinful reaction and pay for it. And that theme about how this lust, how basically means strong desire to get something, that's picked up again in the third chapter. So in one sense, it's continuity between the second and the third
Mm.
chapter. I
So
would say
even
that
like yeah, I think like the point that you made like with regards to anger and all that, no, like even the Chaitanya Charan Prabhu's that video where he talks about
right,
that
yeah,
atrocities that were committed and all that. In that also
right.
like he says that anger is also sometimes very important to like like people always tend to associate anger with the side like it's like losing control over oneself. When you get angry you just lose control over oneself, but actually sometimes anger can be used to kind of express your emotions, I guess.
Devotional, yeah,
Devotion, yes.
yeah.
Correct, correct.
Look at Hanuman. I mean, when he first landed in Lanka, and the sheer fury of his beloved Lord Ram's wife consort Sita being trapped there, when he sees that, like, what does he do? He sets fire to Lanka with his tail.
Mm,
You see, Hanuman, who is the ultimate kind of celibate, ultimate devout servant of Lord Ram, but Hanuman does it because this, as Chaitanya Charan Prabhu says in that video about how to respond to the atrocities in Bangladesh against Hindus and ISKCON devotees, he says, where you invested something, you feel angry.
mm,
Mother really feels angry when a child who she's invested a lot of effort into just says, I'm not going for the final exam. I don't care. You see? So that's wherever there's an investment in something, maybe devotional sentiments, attachment to whatever, some endeavor you've made, definitely there's going to be anger. This is
mm,
another of those misconceptions that if you're genuinely spiritual, you will not feel anger at all. That is impersonal. That is the impersonal philosophy of impersonalism, that you just don't respond to anything at all.
mm,
Like that's not real. But at the same time, that anger you have to really watch out for, but you can do crazy things.
mm,
I personally know someone, I knew someone who was serving in a jail in Chennai. Of course, you're not in Chennai, I forgot if you were in Bangalore, but in the jail in Chennai. And how I came to know is a friend of mine in ISKCON who's a doctor, she was sent in the role of a doctor to check upon those people who assassinated Rajiv Gandhi. You know, who were they?
mm.
That there was a Nalini. Raji died.
Some Sri Lankan people, no? Like I think it was
Yeah,
one Sri Lankan person. No?
yeah, the suicide
Mm,
bomber Raji died right then, the one with spectacles. But there were others, Nalini, and then she gave birth to a child, and then there was another man. So somehow it came to this lady's a lot. Her name was Geeta, to go and to check the medical condition routinely. So she was working in the government medical college. This way, she going to know of a case where a young girl was quarreling with her mother-in-law. So much work and so much harassment. Poor, really poor people. And in a fit, the mother-in-law kept taunting and poking. In a fit of anger, she was sewing something. That amicala, the one that
mm,
you use like a grinding mortar and
mm,
pestle, and the poor girl was fully pregnant, and in that condition she just took that and hit her mother-in-law with it, and the mother-in-law died on the spot. And this young girl's brother came to visit about 2 minutes later. He saw what happened, and they just fudged the whole crime, and he took the blame. So he is serving a sentence in the prison. Now, everybody there will tell you they know he didn't do it. They know it's probably the young girl, but they don't have any evidence to prove that. So
mm,
he is serving out his term. He's a very obedient prisoner, and he's like most probably he did get out later because of his good record and everything. They reduced his jail term. But in a fit of anger, what that young girl was provoked into doing, combination of her utter poverty and the heat and the circumstances, and her fully pregnant, her body was, and this mother-in-law taunting. So that kind of anger, I mean, you pay a very heavy price. You, or in this case, a brother took the
mm,
blame.
mm,
You really pay a price. So the second chapter is warning about that. By comparison, the first chapter, which is just setting the scene, there's not much there. Of course,
mm,
every chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is very valuable, but the first chapter, you can say it's just the military the arrangements, and of course, Arjuna's confusion starts. Now, what happens here in the third chapter is it starts with this misconception, because after everything that Krishna has said, Arjuna is got it wrong. He thinks he's supposed to give up work altogether. That is, he thinks he has to give up fighting, which is his role as a military general. But so it starts with that question. I'm confused. Again, the confusion kind of lingers. He's asking Krishna, you on in one breath you tell me I shouldn't do any work at all, and then again you ended your last speech by telling me get up and fight. And because what Krishna is actually telling him is to give up the not be attached to the results, but to still do his work or do his prescribed duty.
Mm.
That was the message that Krishna was giving.
So
It's not because
So Arjuna's, like, I've heard it somebody else saying this, that um that what Krishna was trying to tell Arjuna is that, like, I mean, Arjuna's basic dilemma was that, like, how can you do this, like, how can you do this when, like, when this, like, sort of unholy thing, how is it that your karma will be, like, be good
yeah,
after
yeah.
all of this and all that stuff. So he's wrestling with that idea, so he tells, I'm going to give up everything, I'm going to detach. So Krishna is
Yeah,
saying that there is a way to, like, kind of live in this world. He's like, you're
yeah,
right.
yeah.
That is one path, which is the jnana and the knowledge part. But there is a way to kind of
Mm.
live in this world where you can still, like, where you can be part of this, like, where you can still do your work, which is called the karma yoga path, or, like, the action oriented
That's
part.
that's
So it's like, what you have to do in that situation is you have to approach everything in life with a kind of, like, how you approach spiritual knowledge, that's the same way you got to approach life. So every action, you need to put all those things into action, and when you put those things into action, then you will get, like, for example, like, you fight this battle and you win, you defeat your enemies, but you do it out of the devotion of, for me, or you do it out of the devotion of, like, you do it so that your, that your karma in the end of the day is, like, better or good or whatever and stuff. If you do anything in the devotion of me, then it'll turn out to be good. So he gives that kind
right.
of vision to him. Yeah. So
You're right. That just do your prescribed duty, do what you have to do, and
mm,
don't think about the results. Do it just for my sake. This
mm,
is like the ultimate platform, and this is what protects us from getting reactions, good or bad. Because don't forget, even if you do things that are going to get you good reaction and good karma, you're going to end up coming back here to experience that good karma. It's like you win, cashback coupons. No, trends. Yeah, you go to this setup called trends, you buy something and they give you all these coupons. What does it mean? It means so much off, and but you have to go back to that shop and buy
mm.
again something more in order to avail of these coupons. So it's our position is like that. So we have to be very careful whatever we do. I mean, to the extent it sometimes takes lifetimes to be able to act in this manner. But the
Mm.
beginning is very much this. It really takes lifetime to
So
adjust.
yeah, so Krishna says that, like the path of jnana will also lead to spiritual enlightenment, but it's very difficult for those people to, like, attain that. Then you got
Yeah,
another path is basically like, you do rituals or you do certain pujas, but that'll only
yeah.
get you to heaven, and again you'll go back down
Correct.
to, like,
Absolutely correct.
the
Yeah, yeah.
you'll be born again. You can enjoy it for some time, but then you'll be born again. The true path to, like,
Swargaloka.
sort of,
Yeah,
yeah, Swargaloka, and you mentioned that day, no, Swargaloka. So
yeah.
the other path is, like, the true, like, what he says is the true path is that you do everything in this world with a certain sense of devotion, with in my, like, in your mind, for me. And if you do that, you get to a place called as Vairagya, right? That, yeah.
Right. Renunciation. Renunciation basically is a state of mind. It doesn't mean that you renounce necessarily things and the work you have to do. You're
Mm,
right. And because it's all about a change of consciousness and a change of heart. The internal stuff is more important than what you do externally. So Krishna is telling Arjuna to still do his prescribed duty because we all have a psychophysical natures. That is what Varna and Ashram is all about. That we have a psychophysical. Remember in an earlier class we discussed how some of us are naturally with a Kshatriya leaning. That is,
mm,
we protect other people when they're getting hurt, when somebody is attacking them. We can't just sit and watch idly. We react. You see, it's that we stand up, we risk our lives sometimes to play this role of protector. So that's the Kshatriya nature. And Arjuna, he has a certain psychophysical nature. This is that of a Kshatriya. He's been not just born and trained, he's excelled in all this military warfare. It's got a whole rich history. Top of that, you have to look at his material position. He is a family man. He has a family to support. He is a military person, like a military officer. All he can do is to continue fighting and continue ruling. And that's what the Kauravas were not allowing them to do, because they said, we won't give you any land or any kingdom to rule. So what are these people supposed to do? It is foolish. It's foolish thinking for Arjuna to imagine he'll just go and live in the forest. There's examples often given about this sack race,
Hmm.
children's sports day. You do this.
Yeah,
Have you
yeah. The
have
potato
you ever
bag
done it?
race.
Yeah, potato bag race. So that's what it's called.
When I
Like
was small, when I was very small, I must have done it.
sack race.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm seeing like in like friendly sports, and sometimes like colony sports day.
Hmm.
The sack race, actually, if you've ever done it, if you've ever been inside that sack and tried to hop and jump and come ahead,
Hmm.
that's our position in the material world. It's an awkward position.
Hmm.
We can run freely if we get out of that sack. But because we're in the sack, at every step we run into some problems. The material modes are working to influence us to react in a certain way. There is material nature behind that's causing no end of problems.
Hmm.
In fact, what we are seeing in Uttarakhand now, according to the Vedas, they categorize all the problems that human beings face into three broadly, without getting into Sanskrit names and technicalities. Nature is, it can cause lot of issues of flood, famine, fury, fire, anything. Our own body and mind causes all kinds of problems for us. We have a certain type of body. As we grow older, the weaknesses surface more and more. We can manage it, through a healthy exercise, diet, etc. Our own mind creates so many problems. Some people are born, with strength of mind. Some people are born very timid, so they are easily rattled by situations. Some people are easily influenced and therefore taken advantage of in today's world. Some people are not easily influenced. So our own mind and body is a source of so much trouble. And then there is a third category. There's nature, there is our own body and mind. The third category is other living entities. Other people and what they say or do to us affects us. Insects affect us. Some people are more prone to insect bite and allergies, dust allergy, hay fever, spider bites, not to mention the rare case of stray dogs or dog bites, or cat scratches, or I mean domestic animals, what we treat as pets. So these three categories of klesha really means problems and suffering. They're anywhere there. They're all the time playing itself out. You think about it calmly, you can't get away from it. On top of that, there are the three modes of nature constantly beating down on us. We say things and then we really regret. But by the time the damage is already done, you so much want to change your nature and you're kicking yourself. Why can't I learn not to respond, so fast? If only I could have just kept my mouth closed. So much further discussion on the matter and so much hurt feelings could have been avoided. So our position, as long as we have this material body, is very much like being inside that potato sack race. It's so awkward. We have to run. We would love to run freely, but we can't. So all this big Gita discussion and all the Bhagavatam katha, that is to help us qualify ourselves in such a way that we never had to come back into this potato sack. That we get out once and for all. Not that we go to the heavenly planets and then come back again when our pious credit is over. That's
But
not
like,
much good.
people always say like, I don't know. I think I heard this from the Wisdom of Sages podcast. Like, I keep
Yeah,
I think about those people who talk
yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah, right. Yeah,
So they, like, I think they were talking about how, like, this the like, when you're going through a good phase, and then suddenly, like, you experience like a kind of
no,
just
no,
go down, like, and this is
yeah,
constant, like, you will, like, if you zoom out, like, any activity, if, like, the thing is, what they say is that you engage in any activity and you will experience high and low all the time. If you don't engage in
no,
any activity, then you're not going to experience anything.
anything at
So
all. Yeah,
what Krishna was trying to tell Arjuna at that moment is that you engage in activity, because that at least is better than not engaging at all. Because when you engage, you will go through lows, but you also go through highs, and that is
Hmm.
what everybody wants to do. Like they want to do that, like they want to experience that. If you are if you don't engage in any activity, then you're not going to gain, like in the end you're not going to gain anything. Like you're not going to gain any good karma out of it, you're not going to gain any bad karma out of it. You will just be
True,
like,
true.
so the point of all of this is to gain karma, and karma is only gained if you like kind of do any activity. I mean, that's what he's like. That's what I've heard people say, which is like, I don't know. People
Yeah.
also say that you can gain karma, I guess, by thinking good thoughts, but that's not enough. I don't think you can just sit there and then just keep thinking good thoughts 24 hours a day and then generate some amount of good karma. I don't think that works like that. But like,
It,
I think,
yeah.
you have to do some activity for that karma to come. Like, like you go and help somebody, that generates some good karma, and that
Right.
karma kind of is there. Like I've also heard people say that if you go to a temple, just the
Right.
act of going to a temple itself will generate karma. It's not that the temple has, it's not that God is actually there, but it's just that
Hmm.
that temple has some kind of karmic energy that's around it. So if you go to that place, you will also get that energy, and then you'll feel like that just increases your karmic this thing. And there'll be times when it'll come in handy when you have to, like, people always, I heard this in the podcast where people say, like, there's only two ways in which why do we all lie? Because you talked about, like, how, like, people
Yeah.
sometimes are deceitful and all that, no? So people say there are only
Yeah.
two ways we lie, only because of two reasons. One is temptation and the other one is fear. We lie only
Hmm.
for these two reasons. We don't,
Right.
otherwise, generally speaking, like, people are always good natured. They're always going to act according to their nature. Like we don't, we don't lie, we don't tell the truth because we have to tell the truth. We tell the truth because that is our nature to tell the truth. But the only times when you have to lie is when we are, like, when there's some kind of temptation that's given to us. When somebody tells us that, like,
You can,
yeah, you can, I'll give you this so and so amount of money, and as a result,
if,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I'll give you this much amount of money, you just have to say this lie. So in that
mm,
instance, like, people will lie.
temptation, yeah.
Because they'll think, okay, if I lie, then I get this money and I can live a good life. Then the other instance is like,
Yeah.
fear. So, like, when you're put in a fearful sort of atmosphere environment, then people will be
Sure.
like, I can almost like I can, like, the only way to get out of this situation is to lie. Because if I tell
Mm.
the truth, then more fear will come.
Obviously, yeah,
They'll
yeah.
put more
Probably
fear
you'll
on
be
us.
shot dead or something. You'll be
So
shot dead.
yeah,
Yeah.
so this is the
Mm.
problem that most, and these two things, temptation and fear, are all in the material world. They're all like sort
Mm.
of acting in the material world, whereas the other part, the spiritual, like most of the other things of human existence, are all in the spiritual world. And
Mm.
it's about trying to sort of, like, not get in those situations where it's about trying to balance your mind, practice, make your mind in a state where you don't have to get into a state of being tempted to get something or being fearful of something. Because when you're in these two states, no, you can virtually do anything for anybody, and whatever anybody says, you'll do
Yeah.
for them. So but when you're
So,
not in these two, yeah, yeah.
yeah, if you don't have any reference point, like, I mean, for example, your reference point is that you're Siddharth Kanan, son of so and so and so and so. Okay, that gives you some identity, right? Somewhere in your consciousness, before you do something really low grade, something may kick in, some awareness that I can't let my parents down. They have a decent position in society. They have done so much for me. They've sacrificed so much. When we don't have a real clear reference point, I mean, if we don't develop the consciousness that we are part and parcel of God, we are part and parcel of Krishna. Krishna is kind of endowed me with so many good things, and He's given me so many abilities. I can't let Him down. I can't do this wrong, And because the more wrong you do, the longer it's going to take you to get back to Him and to be a part and parcel of His spiritual empire or whatever, where there is unlimited bliss. So, what Krishna wants is each of these confused, bewildered jivas, including you and me, to get back to Him. Therefore, He gives all this instruction. But only if we have a clear identity and we are conscious of that identity. like I told you, that you Siddhartha Kannan, even if you are very tempted or you're put in a very fear, maybe a bigger kind of stronger force to resist. But if you're have this identity that you're the son of this lady and this gentleman and that they have a decent position in society, they've never done anything wrong, they have done so much for you, then you at least hesitate before doing that sinful thing, right? But similarly, if we know we are part and parcel of Krishna and we want eventually to get out of this whole mess and awkward position and get back to him, we would think 10 times before being tempted to do sinful activity. That also is tackled here. There is a question at the end of this chapter by Arjuna where he says, why are people, even if they have no intention of doing anything wrong, they never wanted to, it seems there's some force that's compelling them to do sinful actions. Now, before we come to that, what we need to see here is, like we were talking about this really awkward position and Arjuna having got it all wrong, that he thought he need not fight at all. That's not true. And you can't ever just sit and do nothing, because it's the senses need some occupation. You know, even if we get fidgety, you are asked to sit in a corner, we get fidgety after some time. The senses and the mind is the king of the senses, is constantly giving you ideas. Get up, twitch, scratch your nose, scratch your, adjust your hair. So like this. So it's saying categorically in this chapter that nobody can sit without doing anything. There is like strong statements here. Nobody here. In the 5th verse of this chapter, it says, everyone is, I'm just reading out the translation, everyone is supposed to act helplessly according to the nature that he has acquired. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a minute. And that's the answer that Krishna is giving Arjuna, because at one point he said, I would rather go and just hang around in the forest and not do anything at all. Not only that that's not possible, on top of that, because Arjuna's psychophysical nature is that of a Kshatriya, which is very active and aggressive and like warrior-like, it's most improbable that he'll be able to just go and sit quietly in the forest. So Krishna is really kind of bursting these bubbles that Arjuna has in his, at the same, and he's attacking even further. You're talking of like Krishna calling Arjuna a fool. He's going further and he says, why you won't be able to just go and live by begging and live like a saint in the forest? Because there is a whole process of purification that has to take place before you can act like a sage. And there's a whole discussion in this chapter on that. You see so many sannyasis who've got these positions and they put on their orange robes and they belong to a variety of organizations. And then suddenly they're doing horrible, crazy things. Because before you can renounce this vairagya, before you can renounce, you have to go through a process of genuine purification and detachment. That takes years. Therefore, even normally in the traditional system, you can't overnight become a sannyasi. There are stages. You've been a family man. You first go and live in a little hut outside your main house, so that the wife and the family cooks still keep producing the meals, right? It's just that you're not under the same roof. Next stage, after some months or a year of this, you go and live in some corner of the village or just outside the village, so that now it's no longer from your house. Other strangers, because it's part of their dharma or their duty, they've been told they have to take care of a sannyasi, someone who's trying to renounce, set a good example and try to realize God. So they provide meals. Meals may come, meals may not come. You see, you accept that as your lot and you eat. So that's further, it's tougher. There's more austerity here. Next stage, there are technical Sanskrit names for all this, but I'm not getting into it. Third stage, you actually go and beg alms from house to house. Nowadays, if someone comes like that, according to the rules of the flats, nobody's let in. But in traditionally India, even 30, 40 years ago, I remember even in our Calcutta existence, that people would come, and because he's wearing these robes and has just his kumandala or kamandala and his wooden clog slippers and hardly anything, maybe a sack on his back, if he's genuine and not a fraud, then you give something. And why is he coming door to door? Because he has to remind the householders that eventually they will have to also give up everything, at least death will see to it. So he says, if you have nothing, give anything. So householder normally will say, no, we have no, cooking is not done. They will at least give this raw rice or wheat grains, which he can then later light a fire and cook. some pulses, something. And in houses where they are very rude and where they basically in say, no, 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 get lost, get out, whatever, it is his duty. Again, I say, provided he is not a fraud, he will say, at least give some ashes from your chula. The chula area, wherever a charcoal or wooden a furnace is burning for the cooking, will have ashes. At least give that to introduce into the minds of the householders that you have to start giving up. That's the only way, finally, when death stares you in the face, you can let go and go. Otherwise, it's going to be very tough for these people. They're completely caught up in the mire of family attachments. You see? So it's going to be very, very tough for them. So it is the role of the sannyasi, if he is genuine, to go through stages and purify his own mind. What does purify mean? Get more and more detached, put up with more austerities, leave more and more to the Almighty. If food comes today, it comes, otherwise it doesn't come. So it's stages. Initially, a small hut outside the main household. So the wife and the cooks who know him say, no, no, we have to reach food there also. He's waiting. Next, outside the village wall, so that somebody gives. Then from door to door. And finally, it's like from city to city. People who wander. And actually, your own grandfather, great grandfather has done this. That is, yeah, your great grandfather. You probably never met him. He was here,
No.
the sannyasi. Yeah. But when we went to Rishikesh,
He gave up. I mean, I've been to that ashram actually.
really,
The one in Trivandrum. I've been to that one.
okay,
So
that is on
was it?
Bangalore,
No, it
yeah.
was in Kanyakumari, I think. No, I've been.
Kanyakumari is
That
built
one.
two houses.
So I've been there, and Dad took me once long time back. I think when I was with Naishka and Iranti and all that. We went there actually.
I
Yeah,
see.
so yeah, he took
Really?
me. Yeah, he took us there long time back. We went and saw the place. It's a very old looking house. Nothing is there.
Really,
And so my dad is telling me like, this is where I sat and played or something and this and that and all that. So
right.
yeah, so but yeah, I've heard of the story of him like trying to. He was the general, the ADC of the Maharaja or something like that,
That's right.
and then
Yeah,
he
yeah.
had to give up that whole thing and then he gave up all of that because and then he decided to become a sannyasi and all that stuff for the rest of his life.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've heard of that.
actually, he had a long life. So, if like for 50, 60 years, he did all his householder duties and raised children and married them and rose in his career. From 60 to 80, he was planning all along for this because he was born in a kind of household. I think his mother did lot of sacrifices and vows and austerities to goddess Kali. And that's how she got the son. So anyway, from childhood, it seems like his conception of a successful life was so many years as a householder, and then after that as a renunciate. So he was planning always. My mother remembers that, he'd come back from the palace, come back from mixing with the Europeans, hang up his military coat and whatnot, and he would just sit in an ordinary dhoti and eat from the floor and eat the
Oh.
same food every day for dinner,
Mm.
which is either this green gram with pyra, yeah, the pulka or pyra with the kanji, and then there will also be some steamed banana. What she said, same thing. He was so disciplined, but why? Because he was preparing, and then once he took sannyas, it's true. He tried building an ashram here. It used to be right next door across the wall. Now it's gone to one of his grandsons, and they demolished it and rebuilt it. I've been to that ashram with a guha or a cave under the floor. You open a kind of a net door, and then you start climbing steps, and it takes you down to his dhyanam mandali is where he used to do his meditation. So I and my brother remember going and waiting for him to come out of there to meet us here. Then he went to Kanyakumari. Then he went even further. That's right. He did the same thing.
Mm.
First, he lived on the road, then continued to be served by his daughter, that is your grandmother. And your father told me even recently he used to carry the food, 3 times a day and listen to him and sit and talk to him. Then he went to Kanyakumari, so that he was at the mercy of some servant, and because he was a great devotee of the Kanyakumari Devi, and he built a place where he could hear the chanting and the pujas and everything there. He built 2 houses there. First one had some difficulty, there was no water, then he built. Then he also started going on like wanderings up to North India, and there's a whole biography of his written by somebody. I think it's an autobiography in Malayalam. My mother had a copy. So it makes interesting reading. But in Rishikesh, in an ashram there where we went. It is the Swami there is still a Malayali. He was a very young man many years ago. Now the Swami is 80 and ailing. But we went 20 years ago. We went again some 5 years ago. That Malayali Swami is alive, and he is living in a very in Tapovan. He is living on the banks of the Ganges. You have to climb many steps to go down from the main road, where leopards come at night, after drinking water, they come and lie up in that open temple area. So one night, my brother and my mother spent there. So these people live so close to nature. And he showed us, it's like a tin shed where our great grandfather, the Sanya Pupan as we knew him, used to sit there and chant lakhs of Shiva Japa. There's nothing there. It's like some stones and rocks. I don't know, not 10 feet, but 10 feet, 20, much smaller, with a tin roof. And every time the tin roof would get destroyed, they would put a new one. So he would go on his wanderings, go by foot, sometimes take the trains in his life as a renunciate, go and sit there and do japa, and live off whatever this ashram would give him. So this is the renunciation. Those who take sannyas have to go through a period of purification of the heart. Otherwise, you're going to have trouble. You will have people using that as a garb to take advantage of young women, and they are having illicit affairs, and then they do molestation, and they get caught by the police. They run off with a whole lot of money. What does it mean? That they became sannyasis before their heart was actually purified. So actually, Arjuna is warning. Krishna is warning Arjuna that you can't overnight go and live in the forest. There's a whole procedure and process to do it. Right now, psychophysical nature is a Kshatriya. By birth and position, you're a householder, you have a family to support, you're a military man. You just have to do your prescribed duty of fighting. Nobody can refrain from doing something even for 1 minute. Senses need engagement. So, how to fight and still not get all the terrible sinful reactions that he is so frightened of? He may kill his gurus, he may kill his teachers. That's what is the substance really of karma yoga, that you do something but you give up the results. Now you can ask, how is that possible? I mean, how does one do something and give up the results? It just means that you learn to practice detachment and to remind yourself that you're not really in control at all of a situation. Like you spoke of how you may go to a lot of trouble to set up this. I may also some reason it doesn't take place, the podcast, or we get a lot of negative feedback, or we get trolled, or whatever, because it's not in our hands. The more we are able to subdue our ego by giving up the results of all our great plans, that's good for us.
Mm.
It doesn't mean that we don't hold any podcast and I don't make any attempt to prepare and come for this. That's not the answer. You do what you have to do, I do what I have to do. But the result of that whole great endeavor is not in our hands. If you can think like that, we are slowly unsticking ourselves from this stuck, awkward position inside the potato sack. And over a lifetime. And then God also lends a lot of help to help us get out. He intervenes in our life and throws ideas. We meet people who stimulate our thought. We take decisions. We change sometimes this way, that way, what we were planning to do. We pull ourselves up. So, like that, this is a whole process to get unstuck so that we don't have to come back here. And
But
we
I
can actually.
Yeah, that is like, yeah, I completely agree with that. But I also thought sometimes, like
Yeah,
sometimes when I think
yeah,
about this dilemma, no, I also
yeah,
sometimes think this one part I completely understand and I completely agree, and I think that is the only like sort of that what Krishna tells Arjuna, that moment of like, yeah, do your duty and this is what you are and this is what you're supposed to do and all stuff. I sometimes also at times I feel like, like more there are many people in this world who would have thought about the same thing that Arjuna thought about, like who would have thought about like at that moment, like, okay, I'll give up everything and I'll become a sannyasi and I'll do this, even though like I don't like this is not who I actually am. I will still go and do this because I feel like this this will be good for humanity, this will be good for, basically like they have this very like, very large hearted way of thinking and all that stuff. So somebody who's like go takes it to a different level, and it's like, I have to detach from everything in this world and I have to go and do that.
yeah.
I think in those instances also, I don't think like that's also not bad, I would say. Like, I mean, sometimes people tend to think that is also like, like, if you are like this, then why you going and doing that? Just do what you have to do. I think that also is sometimes good also. But yeah, I understand the thing that Krishna is also trying to say in that sort of
And they may not be able to sustain it because remember the
yeah,
material world is such a complicated place that they
yeah,
end up like a kapata sannyasi, like it's
mm,
just like a pretender. They
yeah.
may not be able to sustain it. And the first temptation that comes when they fall or when they crash, the results are much worse because people are looking up to them, people put their faith in them,
Mm.
and they enjoyed certain benefits by virtue of their sannyas status. So meaning that like anything and in this world, there has to be a certain mental preparation before you take that step.
But
Otherwise,
it's
this
ve-
is like
mm. But yeah, it's also very difficult for some people to understand, like, in that moment, what is the right thing. Like, is the right thing for me to do what I'm supposed to do, or is the right thing like, is the right thing supposed to be something that is like, that could, like, create, that where I can be detached from the rest of the world and not be attached to the things, the fruits of actions and all that stuff. I think that's a very difficult thing to, like, for people to kind of finally come on to, like, say, okay, this is what I have to do. I think, like, people are always going to have that problem of, like, it's very easy. Even when Krishna says it also, it sounds very easy, but then you're also thinking, like, yeah, but
what
you
sounds
know
easy? No, what sounds easy? What sounds?
it sounds easy when Krishna says that, do what you're supposed to do your duty, and do your action to the best of your ability, and like, give all
But
your give your
give
but
up the
give
results. That's what you mean? Give up the
give up
results?
give up the results and stuff like that. It's very easy to, like, think in that way and go, okay, fine, I'll do it. But there's also that fun part of it that says that, but I also want to get that
Enjoy the
spiritual,
results.
and yeah, enjoy the not enjoy the results, but I also want to achieve a sense of, like, detachment on some level. I want to kind of get rid of everything. I don't want to, because again I'll have to again go back to this. I'll again have to, like, I'll be engaged in this activity. I'll go through the suffering. I'll go through all of this stuff. Again, things will be bad again at some point. Why don't I just get detached from everything in this world and then just, like,
Okay. Okay,
live
I'll
in
give
that?
you an example. Yeah, I'll give you an example. Not
That's the
so
thing
much
I'm
an
saying.
example, meaning just to clarify this, because detachment means that you basically don't react to all these things happening around you. So it's more like a state of mind. It doesn't mean
Ah,
you go away, because even if you go away, people like to get away and go on hikes and treks and go away to the mountains because they can just be detached from their situation, good and
mm,
bad. The mind still goes with you. The mind will keep bothering us. You may be thousands of miles away, sitting with none of your belongings, set yourself up ideally in a tree house or whatever. But the mind has still gone with you. And the mind is like a repository of so many memories and experiences and hurts and joys. And so the real crux of the whole thing is when we say become detached, is not just to physically go away. It is to be able to attain a mental state of knowing what is what and who is who and who am I and what am I supposed to do, so that you can be right in the middle of warfare and not actually be affected.
mm,
You can be in the middle of a warfare like situation in a technopark office, with a crazy boss and disgruntled people around you, but you have to guide it to some balanced situation, because internally you have to learn not to be affected. You may go away. Yeah, try going away for a break or whatever. Sometimes we forget all that. That's why we like to go to nature and like to, go to the ocean's front or whatever. Definitely we can relax and forget, but the mind still comes with us. So here, what the renunciation is on detachment, it does not mean that you just physically go away, or if you are planning to physically move out
mentally
of,
also, like, mentally also, you'll have to, like,
learn to
like,
control your mind. Very much,
okay.
it's a huge learn to control and subdue your mind and subdue your ego and subdue your sense of that you are in control of things and you have to get things right. That process, and also that you can't just pull out of a situation prematurely, because if you are not going to be able to sustain it, it will be a disaster. It will backfire. People prematurely jump and get into situations that they can't handle any longer. They've like bitten off more they can chew. They were not really ready for it. And talking of sannyas and this kind of renunciation and detachment, it's a big step. Yeah, we overestimate and we think we can do it.
Mm.
But then you go there and then you come back again back to your situation. Even the little the good opinion that people had about you will also fall further. So the step of sannyas, it's all about the mind, and Krishna is going on in this chapter to talk of how so much the supreme lord and the demigods are like the demigods are like supply agents. They've given us so many, like Indra is in charge of one thing, Varuna is in charge of something else,
Yama and
Indra
all.
is, yeah, Yama is controlling death and so on. So this the demigods supply everything we need to try to live and do our duties in this material world while we are here. But we have to be conscious that none of this belongs to us, and that therefore we try and offer whatever we do, somehow link it to the Supreme Lord. Remember, people talk about gratitude. Say thank you to those who have given us. Never forget all this. Because it's a process of developing detachment. If we think all this is ours and it's all by our sheer good fortune and ability, no, different forces are supplying it. See what's happening. If they oversupply, look at the catastrophe in Uttarakhand. They oversupplied the rain. Clearly, now people are saying the Himalayan gods were angry. Don't know what we did to make them angry. Oversupply also puts us in a very tough position, and they withhold the rain. There is famine and drought and no crops.
Mm.
So constantly remember that somebody else is controlling all this. This is also a way of developing detachment and develop taking a humble position. So it all goes back to the mind. And Krishna is going on talking, even the whole chapter, in fact, ends with saying, strengthen your mind by strengthening spiritual intelligence and get up and do your prescribed duty. And before that, this whole, and what is it that stops us from strengthening our mind? One major force that came up, major element that came up in chapter 2, and it comes up again here in chapter 3, is lust. Because
Ah.
Krishna, Arjuna is actually asking something, a kind of very crucial point he's asking, that what is it that forces us what is it that compels us to do horrible things? Okay, and here, what is it that compels us to do sinful activities? And Krishna is saying it is basically kama esha, krodha esha, rajoguna samudbhava. It is only lust. It is coming from rajoguna or the mode of passion. It results sometimes in anger, and it completely blinds us to what is what and what is good for us, and makes us overreach and makes us do horrible activities to others. So basically, it is lust. Now, how to destroy lust? How to basically cut it down? The whole Bhagavad Gita deals with this. Lust here meaning very strong desire, maybe for things that we are not qualified to get, but we want it badly. We never stop to think that we are not getting it because we are not qualified to get it. Once we get it, we get heady with the success, and we feel we don't have to be thankful or grateful to anybody. We are unmindful of those who are suffering because they didn't get the same facilities. We become completely blind to all that because we are so preoccupied with ourselves. This is all lust. It's nothing but lust. How to cut it down? Krishna is saying basically by detachment and knowledge.
Mm.
Detachment and knowledge. Detachment itself, like it's a process that you realize you are not really in charge of everything that's happening to you and you're dependent on higher forces. Knowledge, this knowledge of what is what helps us to develop detachment.
In this case, does knowledge mean the knowledge of the Upanishads, the Vedas, and
The
that knowledge?
conclusion of the
Oh.
knowledge of the conclusion of the Vedas and Upanishad doesn't necessarily mean that you know a lot of the shlokas and lot of, you may study for your interest, that's great. But it really means that what is the conclusion? The conclusion is we are trapped here in this material world, which is like a prison house. Maya or Durga or the female power is given the job of basically keeping us inside this prison house. But it's still a prison house. As long as we're in a material body in the material world, anything can go wrong anytime and we can suffer. But our whole purpose is to utilize our position to make the best use of a bad bargain. While we're in the material body, it's like running that sack race. We are very much in an awkward position. All around you, the three modes are influencing how you do, and you do things that you later regret. On top of that, there are the three kleshas, problems made by your own mind and body, problems made by other living entities towards you, problems made by material nature. You planned in advance, you saved money, did everything right, took permission from your family, and you go for a trek. You're stranded there because roads have been washed away. You don't know how to come back, or you've lost some members that went with you. What is this? It is the klesha coming from the natural elements, the force of. So these things are there. When these catastrophes happen, we wake up and say, never underestimate the fury of nature. But the Vedas are already telling us they are there. So we have to really negotiate and move very carefully. On top of that, we are inside this potato sack race sack. So while we are there, we have to understand what is what and negotiate carefully and basically try and get out of this prison. Meaning it may take lifetimes, but we have to get started. And to the extent that we are making an attempt, God helps. The same female power that is keeping us inside will move back. Lot of help comes. Intelligence develops. Intelligence and knowledge gives detachment, so we suffer less. Same things may happen, but we suffer less. Because suffering is at the root cause of why, I mean, it is, we want happiness. The other flip side of it is that we want to suffer less. Of course, we're happy when
There's a saying, I don't know if I don't know who said it, but I think there's a saying, no, life is suffering. Whereas like people believe that the idea of like you have to accept that life is going to be suffering basically, and how you kind of sort of deal with that suffering, and on the level of on the spiritual level how you deal with it, like you accept that like any activity you engage, you will be suffering in that, like even with your family, with your friends, you will go through suffering. There will be people like there will be an instance where your family will also go at some point, your friends will also go at some point, only you will remain in that state. So in that
yeah.
state, when only you remain, if you think what is the most important thing in that moment, who is the most important when everything else disappears, if you are only there, then what is the most important thing in that time? Like is it actually you? No, because like people all there's this, like I heard this person say, it was very interesting. He said like normally when like he's a spiritual master or something, but he was telling, he told the
Yeah.
story where there was a spiritual master who told a student that okay, you go and then go outside this room and then go to this place. So the student goes and then he goes and then he get me this and he comes back, and then after that he tells, okay, now what I want you to do is you go where you are right now. And so then he's
You go where you are right now.
like
Okay.
go
Yeah. So
wherever you're sitting, you go to that place where you are right now. So then he's like, so he's looking around, he doesn't know what he's saying and all. He's like, what do you mean by going around and all stuff? So then he's like, so then he's like, till you understand that, you sit there only, keep sitting there. And so this is like, but I am here only. You're telling me to go here only. Where else should I go? And so then after some time, it took some time for him to realize that that thing, what he's saying, that you like that what you are, where you are right now, is that state of consciousness, that it's like there where you went when you went and got this, and wherever you were at that moment, all that is
uh,
part of that same consciousness, that is part of it basically. So he was talking
so you
about
learn to
that.
live with it. Yeah. You mean
Yeah,
you
so
learn to live with it? You
yeah, you
learn to
learn
live
to,
with it.
yeah, you learn to live with it. That's the thing.
You
So
accept
basically,
and live with it.
yeah, so he was saying that like when it comes to the state of like, it doesn't matter where you go, what you do, or who you are, or who you meet, or whatever the case may be, your consciousness is always going to be the consciousness, or the soul, in the sense, is always going to be the most important thing in the end of the day. Like what he's trying to say is that you look within your own self. Like most people around the
State of
world,
mind.
yeah, most people around the world know exactly where to go if somebody tells them, okay, you go here. But the
Yeah.
main thing is that nobody knows exactly, when somebody tells you go inside yourself, look
What?
inside.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows
Right.
how to do
Right.
that.
I
So
understand.
like people, when even the simple act of like just sitting, like if you like I meditate every day in the morning. So like for
Right.
15 minutes I'll be meditating, and like I'll be meditating first on the breath. I'll just like make sure that my breath is fine. After once I keep meditating on the breath, I realize that time is just moves. There's no concept of time. After
Mm-hmm.
some time, like you keep meditating on the breath now, I found that you lose that sense of time after a point. Like, you don't think about the time. When you don't think about the, at least in my case, I'm not sure about other
Right,
people have
right.
different methods of
Mm.
meditation, I guess. But in my case,
Yes.
what I've understood is like when you lose that sense of time, there's almost that sense of like you're going more deep. I'm not sure. I don't know if you can understand that, but like
You
I'm sure you
mean you're
understand that. Yeah.
withdrawing, yeah, you're withdrawing from things around you and you're no longer concerned that time is passing.
Yeah.
Then you internally withdraw to some nice space where
Yeah.
basically you're not affected by what is happening. That's the
Yeah. Yeah.
purpose of meditation, no?
Huh. So that
That's the
that's the
purpose.
thing that I've noticed. Like the more I do that, no, the less I feel like what is happening around me. Like the less I feel like, oh, this thing is there, that thing is there, or this problem is there. And like I've noticed also one more thing, like when the minute you sleep, you get into a dream state, or like you get into a state where you're dreaming, you realize that also like is a state of consciousness. That dream state which you are in right at the
Yeah,
moment,
yeah.
that is also in a state of consciousness. And like I have to tell the story. I just heard it like
Yeah, yeah,
this
yeah, tell us.
this one, like this guy is Swami only said the story. He said that like there was this king long time back. I found this very fascinating actually. But he said there is this king long time back where he suddenly lost his kingdom. He had this very big empire. He lost the king, he lost the empire, and another king came, attacked this kingdom, took all his wealth, all his resources, everything. And in return, that emperor said, "Okay, I'm not going to kill you, but I'm just going to banish you from the kingdom. You're not. You have to leave this place. You have to leave this empire." Okay. So he's very
Right.
dejected and he leaves and he's walking, walking. He keeps walking to the point where he reaches that boundary part of the empire. He reaches that. He
This is the
cross.
person who was the king earlier. This is
Yeah,
the
yeah, the
king
king.
earlier.
Yeah, 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 the king earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So he reaches that boundary part and he crosses the boundary. So now he's no longer even in the empire that he once ruled. So he's crossed that empire boundary. He's in a different empire. So he goes into that empire and he sees like there are a bunch of people standing in a queue. They're all poor
Right.
people. They have a bowl in their arms, in their hand, and they're begging for alms. Okay. So he
Mhm.
looks at this queue of people. He's like, he just for him, he's been walking so much. He's so tired. He's so like exhausted. He's so all of this, and he's like, he all he wants is to eat. So he takes up grabs a bowl and he goes to the person who's serving the food, and that person puts this sort of food on this bowl, and there's not that much food left because all the other food has been taken by most of the people. So only a little bit of food left. So that has been
Right.
put into the bowl. So as he's about to eat it, one crow comes and shits, and that shit falls into the pool. So then now
Uh-huh.
that is also gone. So in that moment, he's just thinking, "I've lost my empire. I've lost my
Okay.
family. That other king has taken this wife also. Like he's taken his
Yeah, yeah.
children. He's taken everybody, and now this crow comes and shits on my food." So
Right.
and he's so
What?
angry. And then the next moment, he just this guy gets up. He's actually in a dream. So then he gets up and
So
he's
this the
like,
whole thing is a dream. It's a
it's a dream.
dream.
It's a dream. So then
Uh-huh.
he gets up, and when he gets up, he's asked the question, was that real or was this real? Meaning that
Mhm.
was in me in that state of when I was in a dream and I was having all these things were going on. Was that real? Or me getting up in the state and looking at everything around me, is this real? So then he gets up from his bed, he's wearing his clothes and he walks out of the room, and he sees his wife who in his dream had already gone, had the other king had
And
taken.
1 minute. In real life, he is a king.
Yeah, he's a king, he's a
In
king.
he is a
In
king in real
He's a
life.
king.
Okay.
So
Okay.
he gets up from the bed, he sees his wife, and his wife tells, like, wife obviously wishes him good morning or whatever. And so then he says, is this real or that real? So then his wife is like, what are you saying? Like, I don't understand what you're saying. He's like, is this the only thing? He's only saying this. He's only saying, is this real or is that real? So his wife is like very confused. Like, what are you saying? I don't understand what you're saying. And he's like, gets prepared, gets dressed, wears all the king clothes, everything, and all
Right.
that.
Yeah, the
All the
costume.
time, he's only saying this. Was that real? Because the shock and the horror of him losing his empire, losing his kingdom, losing his wife, family, friends, everything, losing everything,
Right. Right.
and being a
That whole
beggar,
experience.
on the street. So that whole experience was so traumatic for him. He
Right,
kept asking
right.
the question, is that real? That dream which I was in, was that real? Or is this real? The place where I am in right now. And so then, like, so he's continuing. Then finally, like, there was this famous sage that that usually
He
visits
goes
the
to him.
kingdom. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a sage only. I mean, this is a guru or whatever. And that sage, generally goes on his ashram, and then he comes back once a year and all that to his kingdom. So he once was coming back, and he sees this king, and everybody in the court, everybody is confused. Why is he asking this question? Is this real? They thought the king got mad. They thought he was like, he's mad. He's like, he's lost it. They're all thinking, okay, now we need to get a son and become the king now, because
Correct.
he's no longer fit to rule and all the state and all that. So finally, the sage visits the kingdom, and the sage comes and sees him, and then he tells the sage, is this real or that real? So the sage looks at him and says, then sage quickly understands what he means. The sage understood that, this king has, like, he understood, he's a sage, so he understands, like, what has gone with him, what's happened, like he's had a dream and then this and that. Sage quickly understands through his powers, and he understands, and he tells, like, in that dream, did you were you like were
And
you there? Yeah, were you
uh,
there in the do you remember yourself being there in that dream? And do you remember going through all these things? Did you experience all that stuff in that dream? Did you really experience that? Like, was that, did you, when the dream was happening, did you feel in that dream everything was real? Everything was real. So they says, yes, that's what I feel, like everything is real in that dream. But now he's like, now in this state, do you feel everything is real now? And then he says, yeah, that's what. Even in this state also, I feel like everything is real now.
so I'm
So
confused which one is the real one.
yeah.
Yeah.
So then the
So he's
sage
confused.
tells him. So the sage tells him that then, then by that logic, neither that is real, nor this is real.
Ah,
So
yeah, right. Because it will go. One day it can
yeah,
go from our.
one day it'll
Then
go. One day it'll go. So he's like, neither that is real, nor the dream that you thought of is real, nor the current reality that you are in right now. Neither this is real. So if the reality that you're living in right now, where you have all this family, where you have all this friends, where you have all this wealth and all this stuff, the sages that you're talking about, when they go and meet people in the houses and all that, and they're not able to, like, give even something to this person or stuff, like, the sage, what he's trying to tell in that moment is that you'll anyways have to give up everything at some point. So in reality, what this sage is telling this king is that this is not real, what you are going, even this kingdom, is like, what that dream taught you is that you can lose that kingdom just like how you lost it in your dream.
dream.
So
Absolutely.
that's why
Mm.
that but in the same reality now, you have not lost anything. So neither that dream was real, nor this is real. None of the things
Mm.
that you accrue in life, none of the things that you do in life are all, there is a different, there is a soul that governs everything, and that soul is the true reality, the Atman, or the Bhagavan, or whatever he's trying to
Yeah,
say.
yeah, yeah.
That is the
Yeah,
true
yeah.
reality of the existence. So I found that story quite fascinating.
Yeah, nice, very nice, because it took a sage to give an answer, isn't it? It
Hmm.
actually took a
Yeah.
sage or saintly person to put things in perspective for this confused emperor.
Hmm.
And yeah, because the Vedas also talk of our life, your life, my life. We take it seriously because we hope we can live at least till 70, 80, accomplish what we want, and then that those who we love, they should be with us. But from the Vedic perspective, it says it's like a blip on the graph screen, because so many lifetimes, and after this so many more lifetimes. So it's just the 70, 80, 60, whatever years is basically like a blip in time. That's all it is. And it is, the whole thing is like a dreamlike quality. We suffer because we take the dream seriously. We actually think all this belongs to us. We lose it, or things go wrong, and we lose people, or people disappoint us. We react and respond, and we suffer and suffer. But to the extent you can accept all this is like a dream, not that, of course, I don't think that the king was encouraged to just get up and go away from his
Hmm.
kingly kingdom, right? He
Hmm.
had to just stay there.
You had to
So
say that.
it's about altering a state of mind. You talked of how ultimately, say, parents are gone, you are all alone. But there is suffering. There's also suffering when we are amidst our own folk, isn't it?
Hmm.
because there is so much clash of personalities,
Yeah,
clash of
that is
natures.
that is a very obvious, that suffering is very obvious, you can see it very
Yeah,
clearly. But
till
when
today,
nobody's, but what people don't, sometimes they feel like, I feel like sometimes people think like, I don't know, even you also experience, no, sometimes when you are alone
yeah,
also, there is still
yeah.
suffering in the mind, no, like you'll think, I didn't do this, I need to do that, I need to do this. There's still like, you're still thinking about things and you're suffering in that thought itself,
But
no.
the mind is going with you.
Yeah,
The mind
so
can't
that's the
like
thing.
kind of unscrew it and leave it behind and go away somewhere, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's the issue. So it's all about really
Hmm.
changing the state of our mind. And to change the state of our mind, I think it very much talks about we have to understand things properly. And in the process of understanding, we automatically become detached because a highly intelligent person, once he or she hears a few times that you have to let go of all this, will gradually start thinking, then why should I care so much about it? Wherever possible, let me give away to people who don't have, or let me give away something, and let me give up my whole aspiration to become this. Supposing it's not happening, let me give up that plan. You see people, I don't understand, putting themselves. Yesterday in one of these Facebook groups called the Himalayan Club, somebody called Mr. Ramesh Tahalan, he has a lot of experience leading treks and everything, and he's posted this question that why are so many deaths happening now due to snowfall in on these treks. And he said, he's written there, he said, I know what I'm going to say is not going to appeal to you at all, because I'll be very glad if it doesn't appeal to you, because people get irritated when good advice is given to them. They won't hear because it's bitter. The truth is always bitter. But I have to say it. What's happening nowadays is you go plan your treks. Weather reports are telling you clearly not to go. There is threat of rain and snowfall and landslide. This is October, for God's sake. October goes into November, winter sets in. The rainy season is not yet over. There's like climate change everywhere. Anyway, the rainy season gets over usually only in September in the Himalayas. You still are determined to go because you have your single obsession. You have to reach at the top point of some trek, take a selfie and post it on the social media. You go to these hike groups or trek groups, India hikes or whatever. They will never tell you the truth. They will say, don't worry, everything's fine, the weather will be fine, it will improve, it's always like this. So one side of you knows you're really risking your life and the lives of others you're taking with you, but you're so obsessed with that plan that you have to somehow make it this year. Maybe you fought with your boss to get leave, you raised money, you fought with your family members to get permission to go. So this, when we can't let go, we put so much at risk. So much is there that is put at risk when we can't let go. So the ability to let go, which in another language is called detachment, the vairagya, is a very valuable tool. Some people bring it with them in their previous lives. So you will see they're not, even children, sometimes they're not so attached to their toys. Certain children. Some will cry if they're asked to give their cousin that same toy even for about 10 minutes. Howl and wail. Some other children at the same age will just quickly give away the toys. And say, okay, you take, you keep, you play. Those kind of children then grow up because they're bringing that quality of detachment. They've already achieved it. They developed it and cultivated it by some good fortune. They bring it into this life. So detachment is a great quality to know how to let go, when to let go, and to really let go.
Hmm.
Saves us so much. It saves us tragedy. It saves us sufferings. A lot of this. Some from West Bengal, some 9 trekkers were found dead. Their 3 trek coolies are also found dead because they just persisted in going when all the weather reports said don't go, landslide, and so on. So it is, I think, this kind of spiritual knowledge and spiritual intelligence. By the way, coming to spiritual intelligence and the ability to ask these questions, like the king who asked, which of them is real. This is genuine spiritual inquiry. Perhaps you already aware of this, your generation, that the spiritual quotient. There is intelligence, there is IQ, that is, I think, intelligence quotient. Then there is EQ. People talk about emotional quotient. Some of us are emotionally deficient. We don't know how to show and care for others, and then it creates problems in. But spiritual quotient is something in a category by itself. Very few people have high spiritual quotient, SQ. So those people means they're already inquiring and doors open for them. God arranges that, and they understand what is what. And with that spiritual intelligence, they do what needs to be done, but they also know how to let go. So this chapter and what Krishna is telling Arjuna even towards the end, that the mind and its position in the hierarchy. There's a verse here that talks of how the lowest level are the senses, the five senses, the five majors, and there are five minor also. They can't keep quiet. They need constant engagement. So don't fool yourself that you can just go hold your hands and sit under a tree in the forest. It won't happen. So senses need engagement. Above the senses in the hierarchy is the mind. It's called the king of the senses. You learn to control your mind. You can tell your mind to tell your hand to just shut up. If the hand is constantly trying to get at something, if you have such control over your mind, the mind basically can convince the hand to just keep quiet and not go and touch, something that's dangerous or risky. Above the mind is basically the what's called the intelligence. Above the intelligence is the soul. To the extent that our soul becomes cleaner and cleaner. Right now we're in a confused state because the soul is covered over with ignorance, which is called dirt. And different people are at different levels of this ignorance. For some people, the soul is covered over in a mild way. It's like, say, there is a fire and then it emits smoke, and because of the smoke, you can't see the fire carefully. But if someone comes at us, foo, 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 they just blow that smoke away, the fire blazes. And that is the original qualities and strength of the soul blazes. Some people, they're already in the advanced stage. There are people maybe who now you have cases like Ramana Maharishi, who renounced quite early and they moved on in life because they brought all this from a previous life. Many of our successful sannyasis and saints who've done a lot for society, who left family life very early, they had a right to, because in their case it was like this. In the next stage where it is more covered over our soul and it's covered over ignorance, it's said to be like a mirror with dust or dirt on it. Mirror basically is a brilliant object. It reflects back what you put in front of it. But a grimy, sooty mirror or something that's gone bad, you have to clean it, take it and clean it, and then it shows its brilliant quality again. The third stage of much more ignorance, soul being covered by a lot more ignorance, is given in the same chapter in the original shlokas. It's like an embryo inside a mother's womb. It's helpless. It can't get out, it can't give any, it can kick, and more advanced stage, it can kick inside the womb. That's all, right? So the big challenge or the big job is to try to clean up the soul and to make it, bring it back to its original glory. And then the spiritual quotient automatically like soars. These people know what to do in any situation. They can guide and help others. They develop so much taste for spirituality that they can do all their material duties and not just run away to the forest or not renounce. And if it is the right thing to detach themselves from family life, they should do that in certain circumstances under guidance. So this whole thing is meaning it's very useful. Karma yoga basically means you do your karma or your activity, but the yoga, which basically means to connect with God. Yoga is like the link up. How do you link up while doing your karma or your job? Basically, you give up the fruits. What does it mean to give up the fruits? It means you just follow the instructions of God. That's how you give up. Take something simple, very basic like sleeping. Okay, sleeping is very pleasurable if you have a proper mattress and we like to lie in and sleep late, right? That's the pleasure we get from the activity or the karma. Karma not in the sense of reaction and sin and all that, but just the karma or the physical activity of sleeping. Calm karma, like that karma. But if someone tells you it is in your best interest to not sleep till 6 o'clock or to not sleep beyond 5 o'clock or beyond 4 o'clock, you will feel fresher, you get a head start for the day, you will, the Brahma Muhurta is still on. So if you're preparing for some competition, that's the time your mind will be refreshed. You're giving up the pleasure of the activity of sleeping. Why? Because some higher instruction is explaining to you. God may not come and stand in front of us and tell us, but through what we hear of instructions, the spiritual activities, early morning best. Why? Because Sattva Guna, or the mode of goodness, is most active at that time. So we should, what is the word for it? We should not buy into it. We should basically grab that opportunity which will help us, Sattva Guna. So you give up. What do you give up? The pleasure of the result of enjoying your sleep. How? You sacrifice 2 hours in the morning. Instead of sleeping till 7 or 6, you get up at 4. Slowly, it's tough to give up. You resent it. There are days the alarm goes, the phone alarm goes, you switch it off and go back. But gradually you realize that by sacrificing, you're getting so much benefit. You get a head start. I used to feel this in England because of the body clock. Once when I went first, for the English people, for them normal getting up time is 8 o'clock because it's cold there. And those days I was not that much of an early riser. For me, normal was 6:30. But by English time, 6:30 was 8 and 9 for them. And I was automatically getting up. And one of them said, God, but Supriya, you get a head start. You get 2 hours extra compared to us. So it's like that when we learn to follow some instruction and we give up the pleasure of sleeping extra, after a while we get some benefit from it, and that way we develop higher taste. We get to develop higher taste. The pleasure of getting up earlier and getting something done and feeling fresh and enjoying the peaceful nature outside at that time, or going for a walk or looking out with your drink or whatever it's a morning drink. It's more pleasure than just sleeping for an extra 2 hours. So that's how we start giving up, the results of some activity.
That's a
Then,
pleasure. That's a pleasure part of it, no? Like it's like sometimes like when you're doing work and all that, you're like, I need to take one day off, like just to, just to like maybe one day I can like, just chill, relax and do nothing and all that stuff. And the rest of the other days you're like, in that same like, okay, you're getting up at this time, you're doing this now. It's 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 not easy sometimes.
yeah, yeah, it is necessary also to take a break. If one
Yeah.
must take a break and one needs it. So you just take some leave later. Whenever possible, I think one should take a break. I am all for
Yeah.
that philosophy. I agree.
Mm.
It's just that it doesn't often happen like that.
Ah,
No,
yeah,
it doesn't
yeah.
always work out like that. So this other quality, what you said earlier, that one does different things to create good karma. That is, like you said, to get good reactions. You do things, you help someone, you give some money, you make a donation, you sponsor some poor, whatever. That is, people do it very much with the intention of getting good karma, correct? There's something else. Remember, you talked about going to the temple and feeling some
Mm.
energy there. A little earlier in this class, you mentioned that. It's not that God is not present in the deity there in the stone there. It's a misconception because God is everywhere. He's in
Ah,
every
God is
atom,
every, yeah, that's
everywhere. So by that logic
mm.
alone, He is very much. Even if that deity looks dumb when we
He's
look
like
at
he's
the
coming
sound.
in the form of that deity, but like the
Yes,
idea is that you can't see it normally. You can't like see it and all that stuff. So that's why
we
like
cannot interact. Yeah.
yeah, but that he's there everywhere, and like just the energy that surrounds the temple. Like I like every week, like I think maybe today also I might go to temple. Like every week, like once like on a Saturday we go to a temple. There's this Shiva temple and Hanuman temple here in Ernakulam. So last week also we went. So this week also I think today we might go. So like me, my
Which
dad, my
one is
mom. This is the
which one
one
is
that Darbar Hall ground. Have you seen
no?
that
You
one?
tell me the name of the Shiva temple. There is one big
I
big
don't
big temple,
know.
big Vadakanath
Yeah,
Kshetra.
yeah. Once again, I think if I just search on Google, I think I should be able to
No,
find it. Just
Vadakanath may be
one
Thrissur and
second.
not Ernakulam. I'm not very sure. There's an
One
ancient,
second.
lovely Shiva temple we've been to. Hanuman, which one is this? I'm unsure.
Hanuman is like attached to that Shiva temple. Basically, it's on that side only.
Uh-huh.
I just need to find out the what is the name of this? What is it? Ernakulatappan temple.
Uh-huh. So that
Ernakulatappan.
may be
Ernakulat. The
Appan, like Guruvayurappan.
Tappan. Ernakulam Tappan. Ernakulam
So
Shiva
maybe.
temple, also known as the Ernakulam Tappan temple, is one of the major temples of Kerala in the heart of Ernakulam, Cochin. So that is, it was like established by the Kochi Maharajas and all that stuff.
Oh, I see. Okay, I have
So
to look it up.
yeah,
I didn't know.
so this is actually it's a very like also like so what happened was it has an interesting history. So this temple
Yeah.
like it was actually like so you have the Shiva temple and then you have this Hanuman temple, and on the other
Mm.
side you have this Subramaniam Swami temple.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So these
One
three
of the
temples,
sons of.
so all three of them are in the same sort of this thing,
Compound? This
compound,
compound?
in the same
Uh-huh.
compound. So one of the
Uh-huh.
that Shiva temple I think was constructed by the Kochi Maharaja, and
Right.
the Hanuman temple was constructed by Kannadiga Brahmins who came to
Okay.
Cochin in 1900s and all stuff. So
Mm.
they had requested the Kochi Maharaja at the time to construct a temple, a Hanuman temple. So that Hanuman
Very nice
temple is
standing.
it's constructed in that Kannadiga style.
Uh-huh.
So it's very nice, like, you know, like the minute you get into that temple, like you'll see like the Hanuman deity right in the center of it. It's not that big, so you can just walk around it and then you're done. And then there's like there are people constantly reciting the Hanuman Chalisa there. Like you get inside the temple, you'll find people who are continuously reciting the Hanuman Chalisa on a regular basis. And then
Mm.
you can like after getting out, you go to the Subramaniam Swami temple. That is run by a bunch of, like, it's founded by Tamil Brahmins. So on this
Uh-huh.
side, you had Kannadiga Brahmins who founded the Hanuman temple, and then the other side, Tamil Brahmins who did this here, and then you have the Kochi Maharajas who started the Shiva temple. So you have these
Right.
three communities of people who established these three things, and it has a very rich history and all stuff. Like, you know, people like all these Kannadiga people, like with surnames like Shenoy and all that stuff. No, they
Yeah,
were
yeah, yeah, yeah.
settled down here and all that. Those people had, like, they were the ones who basically they used to come to this temple here regularly and pray and offer their worship and stuff like that. So
Mm.
it's a very nice, because like once you get to that place now, you can start off with the Shiva temple, you pray to Shiva, and it's that Shiva temple is the biggest out of all the three. So the Shiva temple,
What Rupam? No, what Rupam? Is it a Shiva Linga? Is it
uh
the
no, it's Shivalinga's, like Shivalinga's there. The main deity is basically in that you know that
like a form? It has a form. It
it
has
has a
a form.
it has a form, but it has that like leaf kind of form, no, like this, like that,
Ah,
what
no,
is that?
isn't that stuck on the Shiva Linga, the two
Yeah,
eyes,
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah, I think
third
so.
leaf like eye?
Yeah, I think so.
I think
I'm not
I
sure.
think that's what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But they basically like, so like you get inside the temple, you take off, like, for guys, you take off your shirt and then you walk inside, and
Ah,
then
yeah, you
yeah,
can't go out.
so you do all that, you walk around that place, and then you get out, and then it's a nice place to walk around. That this thing is there, and then after that you finish that, you can go to the Subramanian Swami temple, pray there, and then from there you can come to the Hanuman temple, and then you can leave. But that whole experience is quite nice, you know, that at the
Nice.
end of it, it's quite nice.
So you all go on Saturdays or whenever possible because
Generally,
you are
like, we go yeah, like once a week we want to go, because like, you know, it's good that everybody can get out of the house sometimes. So like,
right,
you know,
right, right.
I'll be like, okay, let's go. So then everybody like, okay, fine. Otherwise,
So,
everybody is very comfortable being at home. Nobody wants to get out of the house. Everybody
right,
wants to
right,
be at home only. So I'll be like, okay,
right.
let's get out. I can get out. I have no issue. I normally get out whenever I get free time and all. But generally, I'm like, let's go out. Let's do this at least. You know, at least this in this particular instance, will be interested to come. If it's for anything else,
Okay.
people will be like, oh, I no, it's fine, I don't want to come. But in this case, everybody will be like, okay, let's go. So then I
Right.
bring everybody along and they come.
Actually, just for your information, for the Kannadigas, Hanuman is very important. You've
Uh,
heard of the famous Udupi Krishna? Udupi Krishna, you know.
yeah, I think I've heard. Yeah, yeah.
The deity came, small deity, it came in a log of wood, sandalwood, and there's a whole story, and the captain whose ship almost got,
I've
but
heard. I
he's
but no, I think I've heard of it, but I've forgotten about it maybe.
Madhavacharya, like a Shankaracharya, there is Madhavacharya.
Madhavacharya.
Madhava Sampradaya gives a lot of importance to Udupi Sri Krishna. A cute
Oh,
small Krishna, and you to a wall, a Kanakana Kindi. This Krishna, you're talking of God not being there or being there in a stone statue. The most famous story about the Udupi Krishna, we've been on and off, and we even lived there for some time. So I am very familiar with that whole situation. So Udupi Krishna, that is from Mangalore, you have to go for 1 hour by road. Now, this Udupi Krishna, there was Kanakadas was a very low caste, scheduled caste, great follower. And this is not that long back, okay? Because so he was not allowed to come in the main entrance and get darshan. But he was such a devout character that he was allowed only to worship from the back. Those were the horrible caste rules at that time. This deity, lo and behold, one day just turned around for him. So since then, the deity is in a kind of a wrong position. They can't rectify it. The deity just turned around to give darshan to this Kanakadas, this low caste devotee. So then they had to break open the wall there, and there's like a Kanakana Kindi through which he is giving darshan. It was earlier facing a different way. So there in Udupi Krishna, which is the heart of the Kannadiga Brahmin Madhava setup, the same inside the same temple on the side is Hanuman Devaru. And they do a huge, beautiful Hanuman Puja in the evening, lots of lamps and clanging of nice bells and everything. It's lovely, small space. That's how I know that Hanuman is there. And what, like you said, we pick up on the positive energy in a temple. What we don't realize is unknowingly to us, it's kind of going into our pious bank account, pious credit bank account. So someone, you are going in a conscious state. You want to go, your parents are also inclined. There will be a lot of people who go, not really happy to go, whichever temple, they're not really happy to go. They go because the family is going. They like literally drag them and say, no, don't stay back, come. Someone puts a lamp in their hand and says, show it. Someone says, okay, come on, do this namaskar, whatever they're doing. Unknown to them, it is what is called a sukriti or pious credit, agyata. They are not even aware. And over lifetimes, when they basically this accumulates, or even over one lifetime, it accumulates. And suddenly in one life, they have some change of heart and they turn to God. So this whole business, it is not just mumbo jumbo rituals as the Western world may, atheists or agnostics may have us believe. This regularly going to the temple. One thing is, like you said, such good energy and it's very peaceful. There are things to see, and then you can relate depending upon your attitude to the deity there, the idol there. It's also that something else is happening silently without your knowing. It's like you're building up some, like a pension provident fund, some money is getting diverted there. Unknowingly, you're building up in your piety credit account some pious points. That's for people who go without any real interest. For people who go with real interest, also this is being built up. For those, who are very critical and say, I could have been watching, cricket match, football, whatever. They also get credit. That is how generous or compassionate our whole system is. Because the whole idea is eventually to get out of this prison house of the material world and to get out for once and for all. And to go where? To go to a loving friend, you are going to the Supreme Lord to go and then engage in a lot of lovely activities there. But and in the process, so much is given, so many bonus points. You die on a certain day, even if you're the worst rascal in the world, there is some credit, some bonus that you get. By some good fortune, you ended up dying on that particular day. You ended up dying in a holy place. Somebody dropped dead in the Padmanabha Swami temple. Lot of extra points are given for that journey back to Godhead or back to God. There's such a compassionate, it accepts the different people are at different levels of faith, their inclination to different deities, the nature, that it's all a very awkward position inside this sacred. So God is he is sending us instructions like this through the Gita and the Bhagavatam and through our sannyasis and saints and the Vedas and Upanishads. And he is individually there in the heart and watching which way we are turning and sending. So it's such a holistic and a big package that from some corner or the other, once you get into the package, you are bound to only benefit. So it's a great thing, actually. This it really is a great thing. It's so much is available to guide us, and to now with the internet and this podcast, and even otherwise, like we were listening to Chaitanya Charans, and he's talking about how, see, just that 12-minute video gives us a whole different take, because otherwise you can fall into two camps. You can fall into the sectarian hate campaigns. That's also going on. A lot of it is going on in India and by Indians abroad. That's not really a solution. It's not an answer. Or you can go swing to the other extreme. That is the secularists. They don't see anything wrong happening and they don't want to touch it. They don't want to deal with it. They're in some secular space. Reality is people suffered, people died. It's not the first time, it will happen again. The reverse has also happened. Hindus lynching suspected cow killers and whatnot with no proof. Suddenly jump on them and lynch them, and then they are dead. This Pahalu case or whatever, there were different cases. So that's not an answer, but through a podcast like this, a 12-minute session with Chaitanya Chara, actually is a whole thing going called the Monk's podcast. I love his podcast
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he,
I've listened to a lot of his episodes. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, he was born, he's handicapped, he's
Hmm.
like, he had polio when he was young, he lost his mother when he was young, he had polio, he got into the IIT or something and
Yeah,
cracked his IIT.
he was the rank number one holder in this Maharashtra state, and and then yeah, he got into IIT, and then he left that, and then he got into he got into ISKCON, and then he became then I guess he became bigger in that, and then after that now he goes around basically the world, like he goes to there talks with him in Australia, he goes to America, he's on the Wisdom of the Sages podcast, so he's
I see,
like
so I wasn't aware.
I got to know, I got to see his this thing through them. And then there's
I
another YouTube channel called The Temple at the Bhakti Center. So
ah, New
that is
York,
another,
New
yeah.
York.
So that one I listen to that sometimes, but that also has a bit of like has that sort of slight Western sort of influence in it. So it's like a bit like, so sometimes like, okay, fine, I understand you're trying to sort of present it in this way, but okay.
But
And then
Anand, that is because this Bhakti Center is in New York. That's the
yeah,
reason.
yeah.
They're catering to that kind of audience.
Yeah, I
That's
know.
the
But so I listened to it, like in my mind, I'm like, okay, it has to be universal. The message has to be universal, right? It has to like sort of appeal to everybody. You listen as that slide, that thing, I'm like, okay, fine. So then I listen to I kind of listen to people who I'm a little bit more like comfortable, like we can easily relate to,
yeah, yeah,
can
yeah.
easily
Naturally.
yeah, I can easily naturally understand what they're trying to say and what they're trying to mean, stuff like that. But what I found is that one of the only unique podcasts like that I found, and especially in the Western world, and like when they're talking about bhakti, one of the most unique one is that Wisdom of Sages podcast. That is that's probably the most unique out of all of them that exist, because that they don't get too much into like, I mean, they talk more about the day to day things aspect, which again you
Uh,
can relate to. They don't talk too much about like
Philosophy and
philosophy,
philosophy.
or they don't get too much in, they stick to the bhakti part very clearly, but they don't get too much into like, sometimes very easy for people to find differences in other people and then focus on that difference and say, this is like that and this is like this, and then they'll talk about it and then it's done. But then in it's like when you hear like in this podcast, if you listen, you find they're people who've who've lived in India for a while. They understand they understand the workings of people. They understand the mindsets. When people say something, they understand what they mean exactly. So that, I mean, yeah, that is very appealing to me. So when I listen to that, I'm like, okay, that, that's nice, that's good, but
This is
I
Kaustuba. Somebody called Kaustuba, and I got
Kaustuba
his name.
Das, and
And
Raghunath Kapo.
Raghunath Kapro. Okay.
Capo. So these two people, they are the ones who have, they have this podcast. They have other people also, like I guess they have people who are following them, and so they do this. They were part of ISKCON for I think 20 plus years and all. They were working in ISKCON only for 20 plus years, but then after some time they decided to follow their own path, I guess. So they have
This is,
spoken. Mm.
yeah, tell me. Yeah, sorry.
So
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 my
they were just.
friend Shamala knows this
Huh.
setup. My friend Shamala
Oh.
lives in North Carolina. So
Huh.
she regularly listens. I asked her, "Have you heard of this Wisdom of the Sages?" I mistook it for something else.
Okay.
Another program which is being
Hmm.
done. She said she listens regularly because she is an Indian, but she's married to an American. They have one son. She
Oh.
teaches me in my ISKCON setup. I have known her now for
Okay.
20 years. Originally from
Okay.
Lucknow. So they have a farm in North Carolina. Her husband literally does all the farming. They get a lot of produce, and she pickles and bottles, and they sell. And then they have a comfortable life there somehow. They have cows and so on. So she is familiar with the wisdom of the wisdom of the
Ages.
sages. Yeah,
Uh,
okay.
so they
Right.
talk about the Bhagavatam and all that. And the funny part is like I've been listening to them now for a year almost, and I think only 2 or 3 chapters have gone. Like from the Bhagavatam, there's only 2 or 3 chapters have been discussed so far in that. Because
Because
what they do is that they'll take one verse, and then they'll talk about the entire verse in depth. So they'll take one single thing, like one chapter, like say, like they'll take chapter one, text one, like that. They'll take one verse and they'll go in depth into that. So then when you listen to that, you're like, okay, one way you can look at it like, why can't they just finish the entire chapter fast? But what I like about it is that when you go through one verse individually now, and when you discuss about it, you contemplate and you this thing, that is, I feel like it's more enriching, even though it may take a lot more time. But like
it's
we have a
enriching.
lot, yeah, but anyways have a lot of time anyways, like it doesn't matter, like so I find that quite interesting, like that thing of like, because then you understand like, okay, what is it that each thing they're trying to say, what is it, even like when they talk about like the Bhagavatam and Prabhupada and all this stuff, they many times they'll mention about various aspects about, because the Bhagavatam is basically everything that Prabhupada has written in that, right? The Prabhupada only has written the translation to the
Yeah,
Bhagavatam, no?
the Bhagavatam, the major selling English version of the Bhagavatam is very much Prabhupada. Nobody
Huh.
else is attempting.
Yeah, so they talk about that part, and so there are various aspects of like that Prabhupada's translation of the Bhagavatam where they discuss, like they say, what did he actually mean with this? What was he trying to say? Or they'll present counter arguments. So they'll say one argument, but they won't stick to that only. They will also give another side to it, and then sometimes they'll discuss that side, and then in the end you'll only finish, in the end sometimes only one text they'll talk about one text, one verse, and then you're like, okay, so next day again. But one thing is interesting, like every time they discuss a verse, it's always like something or the other applies to you in your life in some way. So it's
So
interesting that way.
what I want to know is, so you have to download an app like
No, no,
on a
no,
daily basis, there are uploads on a
no, no, no,
daily
no.
basis.
It's there on YouTube. It's there on
No, but
YouTube.
how do I know? Like supposing say today I mean making allowance for the time difference and whatnot. Their session today would be uploaded. Let's say.
Yeah, so
Okay.
there what happens is that like by
How do I
around
check?
so like what I do is like by the time I get up every day morning, their episode would have been up, because they hello, are you there? Hello, hello. Record button. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Please continue. Hello. Yeah, Supriya ji,
Yeah, hello.
we are back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hmm.
Yeah, you were saying that if I subscribe, will I get it automatically in my email? This wisdom of
Yeah,
the sages?
yeah.
Is
So
it?
on YouTube, if you go to YouTube and you type Wisdom of the Sages, you'll find their YouTube channel there. So just when you subscribe to them, you have to click on that bell notification. So you get that notification that
Yeah,
videos
right.
come. Yeah. So if you do
Mhm.
that, so there,
Sounds very interesting. Yeah. S- Sounds a very natural and slow-paced way of exploring the Bhagavatam, you know? So
yeah.
I thought I'll check it out because if it's
Check,
on
like,
a, I can't
hmm,
now catch up.
hmm.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, no, no, go, please go ahead.
Yeah, I can't catch up now with what I missed. You said they've been going on for 1 year. Do one thing, just send me the link to my Supriya Karta VVV Gmail account. Can you
Hmm.
do that?
Yeah, sure.
Because
Just
then
one second.
I can join via my
Let's just see if where is the share option. Okay. So I think we can just okay. So what we can do is that we'll end the recording now, and then we'll what do you say?
yeah.
I
I
think
think we'll end
we'll
the recording.
continue. We'll continue later next week. I'll just stop the recording now. 1 second. Let's see you
Okay,
guys next
fine.
week.